Welcome back. We want to talk about some numbers now, numbers that may surprise you or even alarm you. 32, on average, 32 children every week are living in their local social services office because there's no home for them to go to. 15%, the number of foster homes available in North Carolina has fallen by 15% over the past 5 years. And 10,000, roughly 10,000 children in this state are currently in the foster care system. All this information was provided to us by the State Department of Health and Human Services. Tonight, we're examining the state of foster care in North Carolina. We just marked another Foster Care Awareness Month with troubling indicators of where the system is headed. We are fortunate to have a panel with rare insight into the state system and into what makes a good foster family to begin with. Kimmery Sanders is the Section Chief for Regulatory and Licensing in Child Welfare in the Division of Social Services, joining me in studio. Thank you so much for being here. And joining us via Zoom is Gaile Osborne, the Executive Director of Foster Family Alliance, which supports and advocates for foster families. Ms. Osborne, I'd like to begin with you because you are a foster parent yourself. And I think a lot of people want to know what moves you to become a foster parent. So what moved you?
For us, it started out as a journey of infertility and medical issues, and we wanted to grow our family. And so 14 years ago, we started that. And I have to say that within the first 2 years of fostering, I realized that wasn't what foster care was about. Foster care was about serving a child that needed us in one of the most vulnerable parts of their lives so far. And, it was our job as a foster parent to help this child reunify with their family.
How difficult was that? I know you've had several placements at this point. You've told me that. How difficult was it to part with a child?
It was one of those moments that changes you forever. It's these children make a place in your heart that you truly will grieve when they leave. However, when they reunify, it's a celebration. It's a family on the other end who has put everything they've got out on the table, and they have fought for their child. They have overcome obstacles. And, it's that moment where you're thinking about yourself and your heart's hurting, but it's not really even about me. It's about those children that are making it back home to their families.
Incredibly selfless. Ms. Sanders, where is the greatest need right now, and among which population?
Mm-hmm. So right now, we call them our special populations, like large sibling groups or older youth, LGBTQIA plus communities. Those are the type of placements, those populations that we need homes for. Usually it's a little challenging at times. However, the state is taking a new approach and kind of really working and supporting and doing recruitment efforts and stuff. So we usually left that kind of to the counties, and not that the local Department of Social Services are not responsible for that. However, the state is now doing its own statewide foster parent awareness campaign just to make sure that everybody's aware that there is still a need out there.
Is there a greater need in rural communities compared to urban populations, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. It will just depend on their foster care populations. Typically, sometimes the larger counties do have less foster parents, but it just really depends, and it depends on the county.
Ms. Osborne, you told me when you started fostering that it was rare that babies needed to be fostered, but that's not the case anymore, right? And it's being that is happening in part because of this horrible opioid epidemic.
I never in the beginning got phone calls about infants coming out of NICUs or, even kids under the age of 2, whereas now it seems that the calls are coming in more and more, and families are needing support from day one.
I mean, what goes through your mind knowing that you're picking up a baby from the NICU?
It's incredibly sad to know that there's a mom on the other side that's not taking this child home, and to know that the need is there, and for us to step in and be able to serve this child for however long we get. But it's also a moment where it can be such an amazing opportunity to come along beside of that family that's the child's not going home to.
Thinking of that just breaks your heart, but you're right that there is an opportunity as a foster family to pour love into that child. I want to talk about that second number I mentioned, the 15% drop in foster parents over the past 5 years. What's attributing to that?
So some of it started during the pandemic. We started to see a decrease during that time. Also, sometimes foster parents, their goal is sometimes to adopt, and once they have adopted, they stop fostering. So there's a combination of reasons why the numbers have dropped. Sometimes it's just simply maybe lack of support, just to be real transparent. Sometimes and they might not feel like they're getting the support that they need. However, it's very important that we know that we do need foster parents, and Ms. Gaile is a great example as the reason why we need more foster parents.
What makes a good foster family?
That's very hard to define, you know what I mean? Because you don't have to be this big, perfect family with this big, white picket fence house or anything like that. You just have to have the love, the patience, and the time to provide that care for that child at that time.
Well, coming up, we're going to look at new efforts to recruit foster families and new programs to support children. That's after the break. Welcome back. We are discussing the state of the foster care system in North Carolina. Ms. Osborne, I wanted to present that question to you that I asked Ms. Sanders about before the break, about that drop in foster families in North Carolina, because I imagine that has an impact on the entire system when there are fewer families. What are you hearing? Because you're an advocate for families. You support these families. What are you hearing about why they're deciding not to be foster families?
So Ms. Sanders spoke to the idea that we're not getting the support that we need. And, basically we're looking at a workforce that is completely turning over. It seems like every time we're turning around with our social workers. And so we end up having inexperienced and fewer social workers than we had, say, even 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And so foster families are having to do more advocating, more connecting than we've done in the past. And so we hear that quite often, but we also hear the lack of being able to connect to get the right mental health services or the medical services that we need for the children. And so foster parents are frustrated in that sense. And so we want, to be able to get better help all around.
What is your pitch then to foster families about why they should do something that requires such an immense responsibility?
It's all about the kid. It's all about the relationship. It's all about supporting that child and that family and watching, even if a parent can't fully step in and parent, that parent can do something. And to watch that and be part of that solution for a child, and and I keep saying for however long we get, that is what you go in for. And I just told someone the other day, as a foster parent, you don't stick one toe in the freezing lake. You take your entire body, everything you have, all of you, anything you can throw at this, and you go in full force.
Ms. Sanders, the state has launched the Emergency Placement Fund, and they did this to try to address the overflow of children, but also to recruit families to help in some way. Kind of describe what this fund is supposed to do.
So the Emergency Placement Fund stems from the $80 million package that the legislation gave for behavioral health initiatives. So one of the initiatives that Child Welfare has taken on is the Emergency Placement Fund. It is a preventative measure in order to prevent children and youth to stay in DSS hospitals or in emergency rooms. And there's various ways that these funds can be used. The first way is that you can pay a retainer to a foster parent to avoid a child with high risk, high behavioral complex needs to stay in a DSS. They can stay in a short term and an emergency respite kind of placement. And we affectionately call that the Harnett County model because they brought that model to us. The second way is to the same thing with a foster parent, paying them an enhanced rate in order to kind of provide additional services and support for a child and youth in care. And the third way that these funds can be utilized is, and these have to be approved by us, the division, is finding a creative way or practice or something like that that maybe can be sustained to be utilized. Like say, for example, we approved monies for, there was a child, she had complex behavioral needs and unfortunately could not be maintained in daycare. So instead of a placement disruption, which would also, compound issues with her, they were able to find a foster parent that would provide the care and stuff that she needed while the other foster parent worked. So it was a great way to prevent that placement disruption and stuff. So the funds can be used in those kind of ways.
Ms. Osborne and you just alluded to complex behavioral needs, also mental health challenges. We already know that there are space issues at hospitals, finding appointments with therapists. I mean, how difficult is it to how compounding is that to not have those kinds of resources to support these families?
It can be a little challenging, like Ms. Osborne alluded to. But we're hoping with the new behavioral health initiatives and stuff, because behavioral health themselves also has their own initiatives, and Child Welfare has 2 additional initiatives that we're going to be rolling out. Hopefully in time, this will not be the crisis that it is.
Ms. Osborne, you said something to me that I thought was beautiful. You said this to me off camera, that even if you don't feel equipped to be a foster family, there are ways that the community can support foster families and certainly support these children. Tell us how.
There's nothing greater than after spending the day doing therapies and picking up extra kids and extracurriculars to have a hot meal ready, or to have someone that says, hey, you go take a break for 15, 20 minutes. Let me stay here and feed the kids. We have the saying at our organization that not everyone can foster, but everyone can do something. And so the natural thing is to ask a foster family, what do you need? And if they're like us, I'm probably going to say, no, we're good, but jump in, offer to do things, offer to run an errand. I think when we talked previously, I shared, I had returns that needed to go back to the UPS store for Amazon. And I had somebody pull up at the house and say, hey, I'll take care of that. Let me take it for you.
And Ms. Sanders, that's such a beautiful concept. I mean, it brings the community in. It's the concept of a village raising a child in its truest form. Are there other ways that the community can support financially? Can we hold drives? I think of how expensive baby products are. I mean, what else can the community do?
Yes, they can hold drives and stuff like that, because there's always a need for, like you said, baby products, baby items, even for older youth. A lot of times we do focus on babies, but there's also older youth and stuff, and they also have their needs, clothes, games and things like that, anything to kind of support them. They're in a temporary placement at the worst part of their lives at that moment. And so anything that the community can do or we can do to kind of ease that pain for them, I think we should just jump in and do that.
Kimmery Sanders, Gaile Osborne, thank you so much for your insight. That was really moving. If you have something to say about tonight's discussion, you can email us on the record at WRAL.com. You can also find me on Facebook at Lena Tillett. Find a way to help these families. Have a great night.